Yes, I know. Most of you know the movie Straight Outta Compton and think to yourselves, we've already heard everything about Dr. Dre, but only a few of you know the true story behind his success. He was in prison and was on trial several times for acts of violence. He had a drinking problem for years and was even shot. And yet he became the most influential producer in the world. This is the true life of Dr. Dre. Andre Romelle Young, aka Dr. Dre, was born on February 18, 1965 in Compton, California. Dre got the name Romelle from his father, Theodore Young, because his father was an R&B singer in an underground band called Rumbles. His mother, Verena Young, was just 16 years old when Dre was born. And that's why the Young family could only afford a small apartment in Compton, a neighborhood characterized by poverty. In the mid-1960s, 70% of African American men living in Compton were either in prison or on probation. And when Dr. Dre was just 6 months old, there were the world-famous race riots in his neighborhood, in which more than 1,000 people were injured and 34 people lost their lives within a week. There were gang members on every corner, making the streets unsafe. And when Dre was just 3 years old, his mother and father separated, leaving his young mother to raise him alone. His mother moved regularly because she wanted to protect Dr. Dre from gang activity. And since she was a single mother in Compton, Dre's mother rarely dared to leave the house. That's why she was often at home and threw small house parties for her friends, where funk music was usually played. That's how funk also became Dr. Dre's favorite genre. He started spinning records at his mother's parties when he was 4, and that's how he got a feel for music at a very early age. When Dre turned 7, his parents finally divorced after 4 years of separation, and his mother remarried a man named Curtis Crayon, with whom she had 3 children, Jerome, Tyree, and Shamika. Unfortunately, her new husband was very violent, so that the second marriage did not last long either. So Dre's mother was alone with 4 children, and so Dre became the man of the house as a teenager. He took care of his siblings and looked after them while his mother was at work. That's why he didn't hang around outside like many of his friends who later became part of the gang culture. After a few years, his mother remarried a man named Warren Griffin, so Dre got 3 stepsisters and a stepbrother. Years later, his stepbrother would become just as famous worldwide as Dr. Dre. His stepbrother was none other than Warren G. When Dre turned 15, his mother gave him a very expensive mixer at the time, with which you could play 2 turntables together. And since then, Dre has done nothing but work at the turntables. Well, almost nothing. Because when he turned 16, he got his first son, named Curtis, from a 15-year-old girl named Cassandra Greene. But Dre refused to see his child and only met his son 20 years later. When Dr. Dre turned 18, he got his new girlfriend pregnant, with whom he had 3 daughters over the years. At 18, he was also allowed to play at a club in the neighborhood for the first time. But for that, he needed a good DJ name. Julius Erving, Dr. Dre's favorite basketball player, was nicknamed Dr. J back then. So Dre took the nickname of his favorite basketball player and from then on called himself only DJ Dr. J. It was only a few years later that he changed his name to Dr. Dre, the master of mixology. With this new name, he then spent months in a club called Eve After Dark and met a young rapper and DJ named DJ Yella, with whom he started making music. At the Eve After Dark club, there was a small studio where Yella and Dre recorded their first songs. One of the first songs they recorded was the song Surgery. This song, among others, made Dre a member of the world-class wrestling crew in 1984. And with his new crew, he released an electro-hop album called World Class a year later, which made them local stars in the Compton hip-hop scene overnight. The song Surgery, which was released as a single, even managed to sell 50,000 copies, so they started working on their second album, Wrapped in Romance, which was released in 1986. Thanks to his local fame, Dre was out and about almost every day, meeting new people all the time. At a barbecue at his cousin's, Dr. Dre met a young man who was desperate to impress him. His name was Ice Cube, And when Dre heard Cube for the first time, he was immediately convinced by him. From that day on, Dre took Ice Cube everywhere with him and they became good friends. In 1988, Dre had his fifth child with a third woman named Jeanette Porter, who sued him for alimony just 1 year later. From 1989 onwards, Dr. Dre no longer felt comfortable in the electro-hop scene, where everyone was colorfully dressed and in a good mood, and wanted to slowly do his own thing because his reality looked anything but colorful. Since there were so many members in his crew, they often had to split the profits, so Dre never had enough money to survive. Eventually, he was even arrested and spent a few days in jail because he couldn't pay a bill for his car, until his childhood friend from the neighborhood, who was now a well-known drug dealer, paid his bail and got him out. It was Eazy-E. After Dr. Dre came out of prison, he told Eazy-E that he wanted to start his own record label, but unfortunately didn't have the financial means to do so. So Eazy agreed to invest his illegal funds in the music. So the two recruited Ice Cube, Yella, and many other local rappers, using Eazy's money to form the label Ruthless Records and Dre's music to create a rap group that went down in history, N.W.A. N.W.A. and singles like F the Police made Dr. Dre world famous by the end of the 80s, and Dre was on tour almost every day, just like on June 25th, 1989. On that day, Dre's little brother, Tyree, got into an argument with a couple of guys in Compton. The argument turned into a fight in which Tyree fell on his neck and died on the spot. A very sad blow for Dre. As mentioned at the beginning, Dre has taken care of his siblings all his life, and as if that wasn't enough, just a few weeks later, Ice Cube left N.W.A. due to contractual differences. This meant that everyone had to look at their contracts. Unfortunately, Dr. Dre also had to realize that he earned almost nothing, even though he had produced almost every project. So he wanted to renegotiate his contract with Eazy-E and the Ruthless Records label, or leave the label. But Eazy didn't want to give Dr. Dre a new contract or let him go. So in 1991, Dr. Dre brought a man into play who changed the entire hip-hop scene. Asajusong Kilogram, Egi Eges Nyok Centimeter, Magas Volt, ex-football Jatekos, Estesto Neve Shook Knight. Shook was able to use a little violence to make Eazy-E let Dr. Dre go. And since Dre was a free agent from then on, he tried to build a foundation a third time and founded the label Death Row Records with Shook Knight, among others. From then on, there were many parties and alcohol. But above all, his acts of violence made headlines for years. In January 1991, Dr. Dre, who was heavily intoxicated, attacked a TV presenter named D. Burns and slammed the woman's head against a wall several times. As a result, Dr. Dre was arrested and convicted shortly thereafter. Unfortunately, it has become very common knowledge over the years that Dr. Dre was very abusive towards women and often hit them. In 1991, Dre also had his next child with a singer named Michelle Lay, who has often talked about how Dr. Dre beat her unconscious on several occasions. Apparently, Dre had a very severe anger management problem because it went on for years. In May 1992, he was arrested for a brawl in a hotel, and just a month later, he was arrested again after attacking a producer in Los Angeles. He was found guilty at both trials, received a suspended sentence and 60 days of house arrest. But even that did not make Dr. Dre calm. In August 1992, it escalated completely. On that particular evening, Dr. Dre and his crew went to a party in a hotel in Los Angeles, and outside the hotel, they met a boy with whom Dr. Dre had had a problem for a long time. So Dre confronted the boy and slapped him in the face. The boy fell to the ground and was unconscious for a short time, but when the boy came to, he pulled out a gun and shot Dre several times, who immediately fled. When Dre had run a few meters, he noticed that he had been shot 4 times in the leg, so they went immediately to the hospital where Dre underwent emergency surgery. All the bullets were removed except for one, which was not removed until years later. And as if by a miracle, Dr. Dre was able to leave the hospital a little later without any consequential damage. Despite all these escapades, Dre was able to create the legendary Chronic album within a few weeks, with the help of a great many artists and Shook Knight behind him. The album was able to climb to number 3 on the Billboard charts and stay in the top 10 for a full 2 months. The album also featured the latest discovery of Dr. Dre, a young rapper named Snoop Dogg, who, a little later, became one of the most successful rappers on the scene with his debut album Doggy Style. Dre's wealth grew from week to week until in 1994 he was able to buy himself a Ferrari for almost $200,000, which he wanted to test out that same evening. So, once again under the influence of alcohol, he drove at over 200 kilometers per hour through Los Angeles and was spotted by the police who wanted to stop him. But Dr. Dre continued to accelerate and fled from the police. This resulted in a chase that ended in front of Dr. Dre's mansion. There, at gunpoint, Dr. Dre was forced to get out of his car. Of course, he was arrested on the spot, and with this unnecessary chase, Dr. Dre had once again violated his parole and had to spend 5 months behind bars. After his prison sentence, Dr. Dre wanted to change and slowly calm down, but there was no room for that at Death Row Records. That's because the wild Tupac had joined Death Row and the label was becoming increasingly violent. In other words, exactly the opposite of what Dr. Dre had in mind. So Dr. Dre signed over all his rights to Suge Knight and left the label without a cent in his pocket in 1996. So Dr. Dre was left without a foundation for a third time, but instead of despairing, he carried on. That same year, he married again to a woman named Nicole Trett, with whom he had 2 children over the years. And just a few months after leaving Death Row, he founded a label under Interscope Records called Aftermath Entertainment. In November 1996, he released a project called Dr. Dre Presents the Aftermath, which unfortunately did not chart well, so he produced a few songs for other artists. But he couldn't build on his previous successes for 2 years, until 1998. In that year, a demo tape by a white young rapper named Eminem landed on his desk. Dre was immediately convinced by M and had him flown in from Detroit to LA. When Eminem and Dre met for the first time and went into the studio, several hit songs were created in the first session, so Dre signed Eminem immediately. Through Dre, Eminem, just like Snoop Dogg, became one of the biggest artists in the scene in just a short time, and Eminem made sure that Aftermath was a successful label. M's first release immediately entered the Billboard charts at number 2, and that laid the perfect foundation for Dre's next album, called 2001, which was released in November 1999. This album was also a huge success, and also entered the Billboard charts at number 2. From then on, Dre's career only went uphill. Eminem became the greatest artist in hip-hop history, and Eminem in turn brought 50 Cent to the label, who with his G-Unit had the entire rap business under control for half a decade. This allowed Dr. Dre to earn 8-figure sums annually, which he then invested in other business ventures such as his Beats by Dre headphones, until his fortune was estimated at over $270 million in 2012. 2 years later, Apple bought Beats by Dre for $3 billion, of which approximately $500 million went into Dr. Dre's pocket. And that's how Dr. Dre became the richest musician of 2015. That same year, he released the movie Straight Outta Compton and a soundtrack to go with it. Both projects were very successful, but despite all his successes, Dre was often haunted by the past, with negative headlines cropping up time and again. In 2008, his son died of a heroin and morphine overdose at just 20 years old. In 2015, Michelle, the ex-girlfriend and mother of one of his children, released a documentary called Surviving Compton, in which she said that Dr. Dre had broken her nose, among other things, and his last wife also filed for divorce in 2020 after 24 years of marriage. And after the divorce, she filed for a monthly alimony payment of $2 million in court, so that Dre was in court for months. At the end of 2021, the two agreed on a one-time payment of $100 million. This agreement allowed Dre to secure, among other things, 7 of the couple's homes, the rights to his music, and shares in various companies, while keeping the majority of his estimated $820 million fortune. Eazy-E's then manager Jerry Heller also tried to sue Dr. Dre in 2015 over the movie Straight Outta Compton, in which an actor played Jerry Heller, but Jerry died in September 2016 after suffering a heart attack at the wheel of his car and causing a fatal accident. However, the lawsuit continued until October 2018 when it was dropped in court. As a result, Jerry Heller's estate had to pay $35 million in criminal damages and $75 million in damages. Unbelievable. In January 2021, Dr. Dre was admitted to the intensive care unit due to a brain aneurysm, where he had to stay for 2 weeks. There, tests were carried out around the clock until he was released back home with the right medication. And just 1 year later, he was back on top form on the Super Bowl stage, performing with megastars whose careers he had significantly influenced. Even though I don't approve of many of Dre's actions, I think he is the epitome of perseverance, because only very few people could build such an empire after failing so often. Rolling Stone listed Dr. Dre as number 56 on its list of the 100 most influential musicians of all time. This shows that Dr. Dre was not only important for hip-hop, but for the entire music scene. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and comment, and I'll see you at the next video.